Welcome back. Here's where you left off.
Good morning, YouTube. Hello, and welcome to our first live show here at Your Bookmark Podcast. And this is our first time, and we know that we were late for about 20 minutes now, so we do apologize. As you know,
Technical issues.
yeah.
Issues.
As you know, doing a live show has always been a very interesting thing because you never know what's going to happen. And let's just say everything that went wrong this morning. So today I'm joined by Derek, my co-host here. So for today's broadcast, we're actually going to do something that's been pondering in our heads for a while now, since the beginning of movies. That's like adaptation of books to movies, and we've seen, watched, and read amazing books that's been brought into film, that's been destroyed by the film industry, and yeah.
If you're wondering which side we land on, if you're just curious about that, where we land on, we're sort of on the writer's side of things, generally speaking. But there are some exceptions that we do have. So what we want to talk about today is movie versus book adaptations. What are the differences, and how do you feel about it? And there's a lot of we have a lot of more recent examples, but also there's been a lot of books, and we did our research into this, and I think you have something like 100 examples of this, which generally a lot of times a lot of screenplays come from books or adaptations of books or are inspired by books. And so a lot of the films we see, I think we'd be surprised how many of them actually come from books.
Yeah, yeah. And let's just say we're gonna go through a list of books and movies that we've read. Not all 100 books that I've had in my list here, but some of them was interesting. Some of them was complete disappointment, and we'll tell you exactly what they are. And we'll start with something simple here, Derek. Lord of the Rings. I've read the books and watched the movies, and to be honest with you, I understand how Peter Jackson portrayed the books the way he did it, because the books itself are incredibly long, like extremely long to read. But he did a good job try to take the essence of the book into the movies. Of course, he did some creative changes to tell the stories a lot better, but it's pretty well made. I understand that being a screenwriter, try to adapt a book, it's always hard. They can't really copy scene to scene into the movie because the movies will be a lot longer. But I understand what he did. I forgive him all the changes, but I do like that adaptation because it does work very well. What do you think about that example?
Well, Lord of the Rings is an excellent example. I mean, when you adapt a book to a movie, generally speaking, the perspective of the writer or the protagonist in the book is usually from the perspective of one character, and you can't do that in a movie or in a TV show or whatever. And so the screenwriter is forced to adapt it and give other perspectives in it. A great example of this is in the book Misery versus the movie. In the book, the perspective is all from the guy in the book who's being captured here, but in the movie they have sort of like this subplot of the police officer trying to find him and so forth, and that has to give a different perspective of tension in the movie versus the book.
Yeah, it's unfortunately I haven't read the book, but I've seen the movie itself, so I understand the whole concept of it. Here's another great example here. We talk about Lord of the Rings. Now let's talk about, oh man, Hunger Games. Hunger Games is a very interesting book adaptation from to the movie itself, because the characters was very different. It's different enough from the book into the movie itself. For example, Katniss Everdeen. In the book, she was, especially the first book, she wasn't as strong compared to the movie itself. Like if you compare both characters, you see Katniss in the movie is like very independent, very strong, very determined woman. But in the book itself, it's completely opposite. She doesn't want to deal with any of this.
Her motivations are very different in
Yeah,
the
way
book
different.
than
Yeah,
in the movie.
yeah. Like her sister was picked. She did volunteer, but she volunteered knowing that going into it, she knows she's gonna die. She knows that she's not gonna be this person that's gonna be surviving. But in the movie itself, it's completely the opposite. She has the confidence going into it, right? So that's a little that's one of those things that if you are a writer and moving in and your book gets adapted to screen to into the movies, you know you're gonna lose some creative input on this one because they have to adapt it into they have to adapt it for the movies and to the audience in that audience generation. So
Well, and
it's
you also
different,
got to
right?
consider the actor. I mean, who's playing it? She played a very strong character. She played somebody, and I mean, her motivation was to take the place of her sister, and that was her motivation to protect her. To she didn't want to go and do it. She didn't. So the motivation was a bit different there. And I liked how the actress brought that through the entire movie, but also she had a vulnerability that the actress brought that was maybe more substantial than the book in the sense of the emotional side of it. I mean, you always have to have that character build up in your brain when you're reading a book. In the movie, you feed off of the actor's emotional state when you're watching it, right?
Exactly, exactly. So do you have any examples in books to movies?
Of course, I do. Let's start off with an oldie but a goodie. Let's start off with The Hunt for Red October.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
And
Okay.
you know, this is a subject that is very interesting. This is a subject where I would say, and I would not generally agree with this, that the movie was better than the book in the sense of entertainment value. And I rarely have said this about this because in the book, the characters are not. It's much more. There's not as much tension in the book as there is in the movie, in my opinion. And the characters that Sean Connery brings to life and Alec Baldwin, they just have this energy to them, and the action that they bring into it, especially in the final third chapter of the movie, really is great. And the book is interesting. It's very I'd say to me it was a little flat. There was never a moment of danger in the book. It was a very true spy novel. That's what it was, and it wasn't something that was action packed, and the movie gave you sort of a boost with that where there were different stakes coming out from it. But it's a rare example of when I would say the movie was better than the book, and that when they adapted it to the screen that they did a better job. However, I will say that that's almost never the case, and
No,
I only have one other example that's as good as that, but I'll save that for a little
yes.
bit. What
Well,
else do you think?
let's talk about Jack Ryan here because The Hunter of Red October is based on a character named Jack Ryan, and if you only seen the movies, because you get Alec Baldwin played the first Jack Ryan movie series, and after that it switched to Harrison Ford, right? And they had remember the series is pretty cool. You get The Hunter of Red October, you have Patriot Games, you have Patriot Games, just two more. Uh,
Clear and
Clear
present
and Present
danger.
Danger, and I can't remember the other one, but Harrison Ford did play three of them out of four, right? And on top of that too, Amazon actually took those books and made it into a TV show for 2 seasons with the same thing with Jack Ryan. This time it's with John Krasinski in it, right? And I've read majority of the Jack Ryan series, right? And the portrayal of if we're just looking at the portrayal of the character, the closest one is actually John Krasinski's character. It was close to what Jack Ryan's supposed to be, right? If you look at an older Jack Ryan, then Harrison Ford did portray it properly, but not as close to Krasinski's character, right? So, again, if you are if you look at books and gets adapted to the screen, it's always been you have to balance between um character driven the storytelling, how you gonna portray that character, how are you gonna present that to the audience itself, and there's always been a fine line of who does it, if if the screenwriter does do justice on the source material itself, right? So this actually leads us to a very the controversial part of this to this topic that we're going to talk about, because we know we can talk about this for the longest time. The book called Ready Player One. We both agree that the book is fantastic. It's one of the books that I've read that's like that it's so good as like I read it like twice after I read the first one. I reread it again because it was so good, right? And there's another book called The Martian. Amazing book, right? So now this is when you're gonna see screenwriters don't do justice for the book itself. Let's start with the first example, Ready Player One. Book is amazing, but the movie
The movie
is
was
so bad
it
that
was a
after the
cluster.
movie, yeah, because after the movie, I literally stood up. I'm like, this is a piece of crap I ever seen. It is horrendous. It is so bad that like
So,
I don't know.
let's for those that are listening, if you have comments about this, we are very passionate about this, and we hope that you're passionate about it as well. However, if you're unfamiliar, Ready Player One follows this futuristic piece where virtual reality uh, is a thing, and you get involved in the world. And there's about one guy who's trying to get the wealth of the individual who created the virtual reality, and the journey that he goes along in order to be able to do that is the storyline of both the book and the movie. The difference between these two, though, is in how you perceive it. The way the book is written is from the perspective of a young man who is, we'll just say he's poor. He doesn't have anything. He lives in the online world. It's sort of a statement about the future and how everybody will live online, and nobody want to live in reality because they're obsessed, or world is so bad and broken that they live inside this reality. And our objection about the movie is that it does not honor the book. The book is vibrant in both 80s culture and the love that the writer had for the 80s. And we are 80s people. We're old. We're 80s people. So we grew up in the 80s. We know what the 80s were about. So this book and this movie specifically spoke to us because all the references in there we know about. And our objection to my objection, I won't speak for you, Lenny, is that the references they did, the way that they crammed it into the movie, was not honoring it. They changed the way that the character gets to the end of the movie. And the end of the movie, of course, is that he gets the prize, gets the girl, all this sort of, tropic stuff with that. But it's the journey that you get there that is valuable and that is wonderful. And the where the screenwriters got it wrong, and immensely wrong to the point of absurdity, is that they fluffed over it. They didn't look at the journey as the purpose of the movie. They looked at the journey, they looked at the end result as how quickly can we get to the end result. And although I would understand, and we'll give some examples here, in one scene he goes in and he plays a video game for hours and hours and hours to get this coin. And in the book, it's a wonderful scene. It's well written. You get the sense of tension, you get the sense of issues about playing a video game, and they didn't honor that in the movie in the same way. They didn't give that emotional connection to the character. And so in the movie, the character is a very flat character. He has
Yes,
very little personality, he has very little value in the sense of a character. And in this day and age, character development is something that I find that has lost a lot of movies, like the value of a character, more so than hitting touch points. So the character, anyway, I've been talking a
yeah.
while. Let me go.
You did you made a good point there too. One of the biggest things as well too that why my opinion that the movie was horribly wrong and horribly bad is I understand that there is some copyright of the music and all that stuff, because if you read the book, the writer did an amazing job of inserting music titles on each in each when he was trying to tell a story. Like for example, one of the characters walking down the street or playing video games. The first thing you hear is the music that his one of his idols, one of the creators of the universe, um, because he grew up in the 80s. He uses this music to identify a point or a point of his life, right? And one of the biggest draws for me for this book itself is because of the soundtrack. The writer did an amazing job of capturing the essence of the storytelling through just acknowledging a type of song and the artist, right? And in the movie itself, it got lost. It literally got lost in translation regarding how the feel of it. If you watch the movie without reading the book, perfect. You're not gonna miss a single thing. But if you read the book then watch the movie, the first thing you're gonna do is critique the soundtrack and how the whole movie was compressed, because there's three challenges you have to do, and they can literally make this movie into three parts and actually develop the character, develop the storytelling for every single part. And I have this feeling this whole movie was rushed and it was so disappointing. It was incredibly disappointing.
It could have been multiple movies. It could have been a trilogy easily, because in the book, because what he's doing is he has to go through three different challenges to get to the end. You could have made each one its own individual movie. And with the stuff they pump out from Hollywood with these trilogies these days, when you have source material so vibrant as Ready Player One, it makes it really really interesting. And he wrote a second book, and we have Ready Player Two, a second book of it, which we're
Yeah.
not really touching on here. But
was-
I really do want to focus on the
yeah,
first book. But the first book was so well written that
it's hard
it
to
didn't,
go back to it. Yeah,
or not, yeah, it's hard because it was a beautiful story,
it
right?
is. It
It's like
is.
one of those things you don't want to ruin. It's like if anyone ever makes Back to the Future again, you don't. That is a beautiful movie series, a trilogy. It is one of the most profound trilogies of all time, where the writing, the directing in it was all very consistent all the way through. There's no point of doing a number four. No, don't ruin something
Yeah.
that was
Well,
great.
if the greed comes in, then yeah, someone's gonna ruin it for sure. But either way, that's an extreme example of what we think that a book adaptation has gone horribly wrong. Like it's so bad that I literally refuse to like watch this movie. I think I watched this one time like mid of last year. After watching the first 10 minutes of it, I'm like, I can't do this. I have too much pride.
Are we talking
Ready
about Ready
Player
Player
One,
One?
yeah, Ready Player
Oh,
One.
yeah.
So
Okay.
okay,
So the go
so
on.
okay, so the next example of something that went, the book was amazing, but they did an amazing job adapting it into a movie is The Martian by Andy Weir. The book itself was so good. It was because okay, to flat little history here. Andy Weir was actually an engineer from NASA when he was writing The Martian. So everything that you read in the book is about, I want to say, about 99% accurate or 90% accuracy of what is real
It,
life,
it was
right?
it was remarkably
Yeah,
well
it
done.
was
I
well,
agree with you.
yeah,
And Matt Damon, to his credit, brought the feeling that you had in the book to the character in real life. And I can't think of another book to movie adaptation that's ever done that, ever.
yeah,
And that is to Matt Damon's credit. That is to Andy Weir's credit of, he wrote the screenplay for it as well. And so obviously, as the writer, he's trying to keep it well done. And maybe the way the book was written lends to the movie being easier because he's trapped on Mars and it's from a single person perspective. Maybe it's just easier to adapt the book to the movie, but there has not been another example that as accurate as that was. And
yeah,
I mean, he actually wrote a second book, uh, Project Hail Mary, which is going to be made into a movie. And this is a book that you and I are both also very passionate about. Andy, we're big fans. keep on writing. We're great with
Yeah.
that. But the reality is that we are going to judge this movie on so many levels when it comes out in
Yeah.
the theater. And I think who's the actor who's gonna play that? It's not Matt Damon.
It's Ryan
God,
Gosling. It's been
amazing.
pegged. Yeah.
Man, Matt Damon, if you're listening, just do the movie for us, man. Like
Well,
honestly, we just can't see anybody else doing it. I mean,
let's okay. Before we go there, let's talk about let's go finish off our thoughts on the Martian here. If you look at the comparison between Ready Player One and Martian regarding screenplay, regarding the adaptation here, we're not talking about the storytelling here, but the adaptation here. What made Martian very successful is the original writer was part of the screenwriting team, so the essence of the book showed up, right? In Ready Player One, it's the opposite. They didn't have the original writer. If the writer was involved, he checked out, in my opinion. The book was amazing.
well,
The book was
we don't know.
fantastic,
I
but
mean,
I get the feeling he checked out. It's like I swear to God, it's like saying, "Here's a couple of $1 million. Here's give us our rights, and I'll let you know when it's done." That's how it felt like. Like
well,
if
this is where we get to the point of our objection about movie versus book adaptations, where the screenwriter, takes so many liberties or just destroys the what the original person wrote, and is either trying to make it their own, which often is the case. They're trying to make it their own. It's not about adapting it to screen. It's about oh, I didn't like how the writer did this and this, or I didn't like this character, so they just change it. It's like,
no, I didn't.
and that,
Like I didn't say like the author Ernest Cline did an amazing job writing the book. Okay, I'm not saying the writing of the book sucks. The writing of the book is amazing,
no,
but the
no, I
screenplay
mean,
was the problem we
you
had.
mean you mean Ready Player One, or
Ready Player One. That's always been the issue we had,
yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. So the book was excellent, but not honoring the source material is where we're taking issue with. When you don't honor the source material,
Mhm.
just because it's it's like you could slap the name Star Trek on something, but it doesn't mean that it's good sci-fi. It doesn't mean that it's actually what Gene Roddenberry wrote. It's
Mhm.
not what he envisioned. It's what you're envisioning, and you're twisting that, and that's a whole another thing. But
Oh,
it's about somebody else taking somebody else's intellectual property and just having the rights to do what they want with it, right?
okay.
And that's
Here's an FYI for you. I just finished double checking this. Ernest Cline was part of the screenplay, part of the screenplaying team, so he was involved in the screenplay. And my question I have for him, if he's listening or if he actually come across to this episode, I want him to reach out to us and ask. And we have a very simple question to ask him: why did you let them run this like this? Why did you let them took your content, took your amazing book, and what came out is, in my opinion, should never been released.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, these other writers or the people would say has to be more action. There has to be a love story. There has to be they want to hit all those, what I said, those boxes. Got to check those boxes for a movie, right? In this day and age, it's not so much about the story; it's about checking that box these days, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it ruined an amazing book. That's literally the underlining pin here. It's like the source content was amazing, but the result is crap. So, but compared to the Martian, in my personal opinion, is the gold standard of adaptation right now, as of today. We're not
Well,
talking about like
let's
previous movies there, but in the last couple of years, this is probably the best adaptation in my opinion. So
so let's take another longer term example of something that's been adapted. Let's talk about Harry Potter.
okay, I have my opinions in this one, so I'll let you go first.
So the difference between it is that, unlike, I mean, this is publicly known as well, that J.K. Rowling generally keeps very strong controls over her intellectual property, and she's generally involved in the actor selecting and the storytelling, and she's there. She wants to be able to make sure that what she wrote is generally translated into what's on the screen. And as far as I can tell, that in general has happened. And her being so involved in protecting that has created a very consistency to Harry Potter over the years, whether that be in life, in in parks, movies, in books, whatever that might be. It seems very consistent to me. What do you think?
I agree with that statement. But if you read the book versus the movies, if you look at the storytelling overall, the if you look at movie one to book one, I think it's Philosopher's Stone is the first one. And if you look at the Deadly Hallows at the end, there was a consistent growth to each character, both movies and the book itself. But by the time to get to the Deadly Hallows, everything got out of whack a bit, right? And in my opinion, I had no issues on how they adapt it, right? Because you have to adapt in times. That's not a problem. We're talking about like almost a 10 plus years of those of the actors and actresses playing the same characters for the past like 10 years, right? So no, they have to adapt it based on what's actually happening in real life. So I have no issues with that. But I felt like the some of the characters, pardon me, some of the characters got um best way to describe this, got boring. I got bored watching the movies because I felt like it's consistently the same thing over and over again. But when I read the book, I was ecstatic. I was like ready to read it again. I'm ready to go to the next book because I felt like the characters in the book felt more. It felt like it didn't evolve in today's times in real life. You know what I mean? So that's what I felt Harry Potter is. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll watch the movies in Christmas break. I'll read the book if I have time again to read the book. But I will not say that the movies was a good representative of the books. That's just my opinion.
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, I would say that once you got to the end of the movies, they started to become more uh, Hollywoodized, with multiple movies, splitting movies into two. I mean, it just became ridiculous near the
Yeah,
end
yeah. There was a lot
in
of story.
regards to
Yeah,
that.
there was a lot of
Uh,
storytelling. So
uh, well, yeah, and I mean, I don't mind the storytelling. I don't even mind the way they ended that. That's not an issue. I think though, what my whole point here is that the consistency of it is what builds a franchise.
yeah,
And another, I mean, not that Back to the Future was a book series or anything, but the consistency across the movies made it what it is. uh, you know, the interconnectivity between the movies also made it what it is, which is also one of the things that was beloved about it. And Harry Potter has that across all of its movies, that interconnectivity. Lord of the Rings has that across
yeah,
its movies. Essentially, Lord of the Rings is one big long movie, even though it's multiple movies that are like 3 hours long a piece. It's like what, 10 hours or something
yeah. If
with
you
the
get the director's
director's
cut,
cut or
yeah.
something.
Okay, here's
One long
here's another example of a great book, great movie, but the final ending of the movie ruined the book, ruined the whole movies, in my opinion. Okay, Crazy Rich Asian, originally written by Kevin Kwan. Okay, and the book itself was fantastic. The book versus the movie, again, I'll give the screenwriters some creative leeway of telling the story. No issues there. But how the book ended is not the way the movie ended. There's a massive discrepancy here. The book ended in a way that it, it forces you to continue to the next book. All right, there's a flow to the next book. The movie, how it ended, it was like it gives you an open-ended question: are they going to continue this movie series, or are they just going to end it like this? It's like one of the characters found his high school or a friend that they met again, and next thing you know, that's where the movie ended. But you can go either way, right? But the book itself is the opposite. How it ended, it carried to the next book, right? And some of the scenes that they had in the movies was sorry, some of the stuff that happened in the book was not part of the movie, but it did not affect the storytelling in the movie itself, right? So So that's a great example of the book follows to the next one, but the movie ended and gives the studio, the screenwriter, the director saying, "Hey, we can end it now or continue it again." Right? And right now, there's no, as far as I know, there's no plans to go to the next movie. And unfortunately, it was a great series. It's a great book series. I recommended you to read it. Actually, it's very cool, but it just fell short. It felt the anticipation for the next movie is gone when you watched it. But if you read the book, it's just like, hey, I can't wait for the next one. It was just three. I think it's three books, but I can't. It was. I felt like I was cheated in the movie itself, but the content itself and the adaptation was, I'll give it about 80%. It was 80%.
So, so let me ask you then, because I haven't read that one, but I'll give a different example. And this technically isn't a movie adaptation. Well, let's talk about The Expanse, because I know you've watched the TV series. I've read the books and watched the TV series,
Yeah.
and there are differences between the two. Now, generally speaking, the TV show follows the events of the books. Generally speaking, they do take a lot of liberties here and there. But the thing I want to bring to attention here, and the question I'm going to bring is, there are some characters that are not given any time in the books that are basically entire fleshed out characters in the series. One of them is Bobby, the Marine in the TV series. Bobby in the books is non-existent. Basically, Bobby is not there. It's like, virtually not there. But in the TV series, Bobby's a very prominent character that the actress brings to life and brings this huge depth to a character, and is a great example of when the adaptation into a show or a movie or TV series is done very well, because it didn't take away from the the essence of the book. It added to it, and that's something that is really hard to do. Another good example is Silo, another TV show that does that as well, with the character of Bernard. In the books, I'd say Bernard is a very flat character, good character, but very flat, right? But the actor, uh, I can't think of his name right now, in the show, he brings Bernard to life in a very meaningful way, and that adds to the book's lore and to it. And do you think that there are some things, like as an example, The Martian, they were very consistent. The book was this, the character was this in the book, and Matt Damon brought that character to life, and it was virtually identical. And to the credit, that's what you'd love to see. That is hard to do, to be fair, but do you think that there are some examples of where the movie brought a character to life more than the book did?
Okay, so let's go back. If with that said, what for me it was actually the Jack Ryan series in Amazon. The John Krasinski did an amazing job portraying Jack Ryan, the young Jack Ryan, not the older one. Because if you've been reading the Jack Ryan series, he's actually, to make a long story short, if you read the books, Jack Ryan Sr. was actually the president. Jack Ryan Jr. took over his spot as the main character. So either way, if you look at the beginning of the Jack Ryan series, the closest one was actually John Krasinski's portrayal of Jack Ryan. That's the closest you can get with if you look at the book versus the screenplay. The screen. The closest portrayal of that character is actually the Amazon series, right? And the next one is actually the Terminal List. The Terminal List was an amazing book. The book one was amazing. When they converted it into a TV show with Chris Pratt, there was a lot of creative avenues that the screenwriters did to, in my opinion, and ruin the storytelling of the original story. But the character and the movie character, the book character versus the screen character, they were pretty close. They're both smart characters. They're both loyal and all that good stuff. but the storytelling in the screen was, I felt like I was robbed. I felt like it was done in a way that it just ruined it. You know what I mean? I felt I felt that the put it this way, I'm not looking forward for season 2. If they end it now, I have no problems with it because there's no way you can go back to it. Same thing for Gray Man. Like the book Gray Man, the book was amazing, but the movie was shit.
So since we're live here and people are listening to our opinions here, does anyone have any other thoughts about series that we haven't covered, or that is different, or to the point where a character is better in the movie versus the book? Because it's something that I think that a lot of people would feel, and when they watch a movie, they judge a book and a movie together based on the feeling that they had when they read the book, and how they felt when they watched the movie and how those characters were translated. And as we gave the example before, Project Hail Mary is something that's coming up that we have great anticipation for, and we'll be judging very thoroughly.
Yeah,
Very, very.
here's another question to ask though. As a read, do you prefer reading the book first or then watch the movie, or you want to watch the movie or series, or are you gonna watch the series first before the book? Or
You know,
how
I
judgy
tend
are
to.
you if you read the book going to watching them after?
Well,
That's the
the thing
question I like to
is,
ask.
well, actually, yeah, no. I mean, if I read the book first, I'm very judgy. I'm very.
Where both of
I
us
mean,
are incredibly judgy. Like,
and I mean, but having said that, when I started to watch the TV show Silo, I started to watch the series first, and I watched several episodes, maybe most of the first season, and then I got interested because I learned that there were book series, so I read the books, and now that I've read the books, I view everything through the books, and the Silo is a mystery. So because I know what the end of the mystery is, and I'm not going to ruin anything for anybody because it's still being played out. Because I know what the end of the mystery is, I am more curious about how the writers will get to the end of the mystery than actually what they're doing there. And it's another example where I can give the argument that Bernard's character is been so much more brought to life in the series than in the book. So I can make those judgments. You're just watching the character as you're watching the TV show, and you have no idea what he is. So if you go and read the book, you'd be like, wow, it's a very flat character, right? He's a good character in the book, but he's not dynamic, right?
no.
In the series, the actor brings him to life. He's very dynamic and so forth, right? And gives him a lot more to do in the series. However, when I say to you that based on the book series, they can make an entire another series just of how the silo became. And I think that's how they should approach it. And I'm almost certain they won't do that
No, because
because
they
because what they'll do is they'll do stupid flashbacks or something like that, and it'll be very unfulfilling because those two worlds interconnect eventually, right? And so you just you really want them to do it right. And so as I'm watching it, I'm looking at the characters and how the writing's coming. And don't get me wrong, in Silo, there are entire characters that have been developed that were never in the book, and it's fine. You have to do that for a TV series. To my mind, as long as it doesn't take away from what the essence of the book was, I don't mind, right? But when you take a character and twist that character into something that it wasn't, I'm going to give an example here for Silo, and it's a bit of a spoiler. It's not a terrible spoiler, but in the book, uh, the I can't remember the name. Darn it. Oh, well, the Walker. I think it's Walker.
Walker, yeah,
Wilson.
the deputy.
No, the woman who's the recluse, the recluse woman.
Okay, yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, in the book, it's a man, not a woman. And in the book, the man has a different plot line to what is being portrayed in the series. Very different plot line. Very, very different. And so to me, that's a good example of where the writers have taken a character that the book had, which was a great character, and turned it into something for reasons that are checking boxes in my mind versus actually honoring the character that was written, right? And you can make the argument that that's better or it's worse, sure, but to me, if the writer wrote that, they wrote it for a reason, and I take the approach that you should honor that as much as possible versus twisting it. You know what I mean?
Well, we're back to the conversation we had earlier. It's like, how much creative outlet, or how many creative uh liberties does the screenwriter has compared to the writer, based on the source material? How much are we willing to accept as an audience, like you and I, say, okay, you have a book here. We love the book. Now you're gonna make a movie. How much liberties can you was given, or can we give them to say, we understand why you did this. We can move forward, because now you're saying,
I think
that's the
my
question you have
line
to
is
ask yourself.
checking boxes. That's where my line is. Checking boxes is
So
not a
explain checking
legitimate
boxes.
reason.
We're talking about, like, what?
Well, um, uh, doing something that is related to uh, changing the perception of what the show is or what it is. It might be adding diversity. It might be adding a different style to the show because it's not what they would say. I suppose the click word is like modernized, right, or something to that effect. So you change the design of the sets or design of what the person gave in their writing. Maybe their descriptive nature of an event or something would be triggering to somebody or something like that. So you modify that so it's not as so much. Whereas maybe it's written in a historical context, and that part is needed in order to convey the emotion within the book, right? I mean, just because it might be challenging to people doesn't mean you should change it just because to tick a box, right? To make sure that somebody is there and doing that, right?
So, in other words, if the character is a sexual, is a dumbass that needs to be changed, you're just gonna keep the dumbass. No, so,
There's
no,
pl-
we're in
way
the
too
point
many
now. No,
dumbass
no, no.
characters, you know what I
The,
mean?
the reason why I'm saying that is, like, that that again, we're back to the same question I'm gonna ask you: is, if you say just checking a box, right? If that box needs to be checked, right? Let's just say if the box, quote unquote, the box needs to be checked because it needs to be, quote unquote, modernized. Why are you defining it as a modernization? We're talking about, like, if a book is written in, let's say in 1993, okay, and now you're gonna adapt it into today's audience, right? Remember, screen movies is designed to make money, right? And for me, I'll give the screenplay and the director and the movie studios the liberties to do creative changes. But as soon as you change those changes, it changes the story so much. That's when I draw the line, right? But
That's the argument I'm making. The modernization of a thing to be
so
for a group or whatever that might be
so
is part of the
but remember, the book has been designed for a different audience.
you
So,
know that
you know what I mean?
I would argue against that because anybody who's reading a book is reading it for the premise of the book, right? And doing that, right? And when you read a book, it's very different than watching a movie because you are creating the emotion, you are creating the character in your mind, you are creating the 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 perception of what that is in your own mind versus you're engaging with a movie and how somebody else wants you to perceive it.
Okay.
So directors like play that character, sad or mad or angry. That emotion is what you're perceiving. But when you're reading it, you're the one creating that. You decide what emotion that is, right?
Okay.
And do
Here's an example: War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. It's been modernized to Tom Cruise's version. I have other issues with that. Do you like the movie?
I didn't have any issues with the movie, but it's been so long since I read the book, I can't remember the differences between the
The
two.
difference
It's
is significantly a lot. We're talking about the only thing that survived from the adaptation is the aliens. The
I
movies,
don't necessarily disagree with
the
that. I mean, it's
movie was
Tom
the
Cruise.
movie was designed to be looked at a
We had to have,
person that's
we
running
had to
around.
have,
So
we
like
had to have the Tom Cruise running in it. We had to
yeah,
adapt it for
so
Tom
like
Cruise
that
running in it.
adaptation from the book into the movie was complete fart. That movie was so bad that I did not finish it. Okay, so that modernization of that movie, I have no issues with modernization because it was written a long time ago. But
Well,
the
it's a good
storytelling is
example.
out though. We're talking about the storytelling that's been. You took the essence of the story, took 90% out of it, and put Tom Cruise running, and say, "Here you go. Here's a great movie. We're paying homage to H.G. Wells's book."
Just
You
because
know,
H.G. Wells didn't have Tom Cruise running doesn't make it bad. But I take your point.
you know what I
I'm
mean.
just
So
saying.
if you want to modernize that, then I have no problem. You're gonna modernize it, but keep the essence of the book, right?
I think your objection here, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that they took what H.G. Wells wrote and they made it into this action thriller of a father protecting his kids kind of thing. And that's where your objection is coming from. So I would make the argument to you that what they did was they made a movie within the world of War of the Worlds versus adapting the book. They just created a movie within the universe of that.
Yeah, it's
So that's my argument. It's a different. Ah, you got me there. I got you. See,
the it's yeah. So I'm just saying that modernizing an older book into screenplay, right? The writers in today's, if the book is like a certain years, right? And back then that is considered normal. In today's society, that's not considered normal. Have you heard of saying you can't get away with that now? Even The Office, you can't redo The Office because you can't get away with stuff that they did that time. Period. Because they'll get shut down really fast. Same thing for books being adapted to in today's world. You can't just say, "Oh, you can't just change this character, or this character needs to be removed, or this character needs to be changed slightly to be accepted." I have no problems with that. I have zero issues with that. I have issues is like how you're gonna change the story out so much that the book does not, the movie or the screenplay or the TV show does not reflect the original book. That's where I draw the line, right?
I think my drawing line is when they add things that don't need to be in there. And again, I go back to the whole checking the boxes thing, right? Like you don't like. Okay, so you have sensitivities in the world, and people are triggered by stuff, and I get that. Okay, great. You make a point there. Something that was written or done in the 1950s is not going to be as relevant today, and so they might have to modify it in doing that. But when they have to add things in order to enable that, then that's where there's a problem, right?
So okay,
Because it's not what the original writer wrote. And so your argument is the argument of, changing something to something that you don't perceive it as being honoring the book. But then again, your argument is the check boxes are okay. So
well, you
which is
you just literally contradict yourself. You said the character.
I did.
If you
Yes,
look
I
at
did. I did.
look at the expense, Bobby, Bobby was not part of the whole book, and was one of the strongest character in the TV show.
No, but there's a difference there. Again, I'm not
They made
talking
that
about.
movie. They literally made
I,
that character.
no, no, no. What I'm talking about is changing something. Bobby's character wasn't so much changed as it was brought to life. There's a difference
Though
between those
you just
two.
said it was added. You don't like things added to conform to certain
No, when I
things.
say okay, maybe I should have been clarified. When I say when I was making a point about your argument, by the way, when you say add things, you mean changing something that wasn't in the book. Let's give an example here. Let's take Ready Player One. Let's talk about the racing scene in Ready Player One in the movie, right? That was not part of the book. It was completely made up. All it was there for was to give some action packed scene in a movie. But to me, the video game scene that he did was far more impactful and would have had a much larger emotional impact than some racing scene. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the example that I'm giving about changing something, about inventing something that doesn't have to be there. They invented a racing scene for the movie for the checkbox of we got to have some action. You don't have to have action in a movie to make it meaningful, especially when it's not about action. There's action in Ready Player One, and even the ending of the movie did not honor the book. I loved the ending of the book and how they did that. They could have spread that across. They didn't even have to make a whole nother movie about it, but it didn't match up to anything that had to do with the book. And to me, that just really tore out the heart of what the book was, even though they tried to give glad handing to it by trying to enable this romance, like the subplot of the romance, right, in Ready Player One. That was very integral within the book, but it was an afterthought within the movie. It was a cheap, little romance that they just put in there. But in the book, it was a much more meaningful thing, right? Are you with me so far?
I'm still with you. Yeah.
Okay. So when you change that, you change the romance, the subplot of it. It's still there, the romance, whatever that might be, but they put it to the side and they create something wholly new that isn't necessary. It doesn't improve the plot. It doesn't improve the value of the movie, which is the race scene. We'll just use that as the argument here. It doesn't give anything additional to it. And the only reason it's there is to check a box.
So you're telling me checking the boxes, so having race scene there, and having a romance that's more in your face than the book. Is that what you're saying?
Is the check in the box is we got to have a little action. Let's do that. Let's add a race scene, and that dishonors the book. I mean, see what I'm saying? Like checking the box, right? That's the best example I can give you right now in doing that.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that doesn't mean. Okay, either way, yours is quote unquote checking the box. Okay, for me is the changing the story enough that does not reflect the book itself. Is my pet peeve. Right.
Yeah, but again, it's the same argument. What about the racing? That's the same thing. They're changing the book.
That's why. That's what I'm saying. I never liked that movie. That's why I keep saying that movie sucks. So we both agree that the movie sucks.
Our reviews for the movie are like 1 star here. It's like it's gonna be.
So Steven Spielberg, if you're listening, we're very disappointed in you right now. So, but either way, this is.
Actually, I wonder if it was his fault. I wonder if like the screenwriter brought it to him and he's just like, okay, I'll make it, whatever. I just wonder how that went down. Like
yeah,
did he read the book?
Remember, he was just a producer, right? He didn't direct it. Did he direct it? I don't remember anymore. But if the book that you like gets adapted to screenplay, here's a question for everyone: if the book that you like get adapted to screenplay, would you watch it? And the question: if you do watch it, how much were you willing to critique it? Are you going to critique the character all the way to the storytelling, or are you going to say, I understand, but X, Y, Z? That's the question you have to ask yourself. It's the question that I want to ask everyone if you're listening. Were you willing to watch that movie, the book that you really love, and how much are you planning to give that? How much critiquing are you going to give them? That's the question you have to ask yourself. That's the question I ask myself. That's the question I ask you, Derek. Were you willing to forgive the movie if the movie is good enough to say this is a good movie? Then you'll forgive it.
Hey,
or
always, if there's a good movie, I'm always down for a good movie. That is certainly the case. But we want to ask that to the audience and ask them if they find that to be the same. And feel free to leave comments in the comment section. We'll be happy to respond back.
Thank you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Derek, this is our first show. Granted, we had some technical difficulties at the beginning. We were delayed by 15 minutes. We do apologize for that one. But to make a long story short, because we are doing this remotely, so it's kind of hard for us to coordinate our times and coordinate our technical rehearsals. But thank you again for joining us. Our next live show is in February. Help me here, Derek. February
2, buddy.
I'm sorry?
February 2.
February 2nd, 2025, our next show at 9 a.m. Eastern. So, thank you very much for joining. We'll see you guys next time. And don't forget to join us every Wednesday for our book reviews, our chapter book reviews. It drops every Wednesday morning, so you can listen to that as well too. And we're going to be dropping this one as well on YouTube and in our podcast as soon as it's ready. Thank you guys. See you guys next time.
Thank you for joining us. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe, and help others find this podcast by sharing a review. You can find us on all your favorite podcasting apps. Join us again right here where your bookmark left off.